saved by the Savior. Love, that's a layup. Temptation, couldn't even phase it. 40 days and nights and still proclaiming the kingdom. Back by the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Every time we get involved, it's a dub. By the fall, ain't no drug. It ain't even close, oh Lord. Faith, 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 faith. Ain't even close, oh Lord. Faith, 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 favor. Tiptoeing with this faith of mine. Big stepper, yeah, yeah. Big stepper, big stepper, yeah. Back by the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Every time we get involved, it's a dub. By the fall, ain't no drug. It ain't even close, oh Lord. It ain't even close. It ain't even close, oh Lord. It ain't even close. All praise to the Most High.
They feel so distant from their parents' generation. They don't believe they have much power to change things. They are bewildered by the wide variety of choices they face. Our affluence, our new mobility, our society's very complexity.
I think that it's reached the point now where there are many things in this society that we as a younger generation feel need change.
This society, America, was organized along lines that structured a white power structure.
Yeah! Being square is out. That is to
We're being co-opted right now.
Right.
Right now, being co-opted. Seize the camera, Schleifer, we'll make a different kind of film. Come on! In order for me to exist, I have to exist essentially outside of the system, because the system won't allow me to cooperate. My system, no, there's an underground system constantly. We feed off all kinds of people. We are also, we feed off the bourgeois system as it stands now. We will steal, we will rob, we will do everything possible to exist. At the point at which you become successful and you become the establishment, you kill yourself.
Why are you at the Love-In?
Because I think it's fun and I get a good sense of community spirit I don't anywhere else.
What, do you think there's a love revolution going on?
I hope so.
Why do you hope so?
Well, because, I mean, we're just up to date, the world has been in such bad condition that love is a very good start to get it cleaned up, I think.
In 1964, I worked very hard for Senator Goldwater for president.
All right.
And in fact, I quit school, and a good many other people did too, and there were a lot of young people involved in that campaign, if you remember. And we worked awfully hard, and we didn't prevail. But I don't think that anyone here would say that we therefore had the right, since we were unable to prevail by rational means, since we were unable to convince people of the correctness of our views, that we therefore had a right, or more than a right, a moral obligation to resort to other means. Violence if necessary. Did I have a right, because I couldn't elect people who believed as I did, to say, then I will force them upon you?
Can we get a quick reaction?
I think
Stand up, please.
That reports your point of view. Senator Goldwater may have been on the extreme end of your point of view.
That, my friend, is a perversion.
But nonetheless, the conservative philosophy is abundant in the Congress and the Senate, and the control of the economic factors, the governmental factors in the nation are conservative, so that you don't feel, perhaps, the way the left would feel, the frustration, because in a sense you are in control.
Why are you here?
Because I like Love-Ins.
Are you a part of the Love generation?
Yes.
What's different about the Love generation?
Oh, I know. The whole world just seems to be happy. I mean, when everybody's in love, everybody seems to be so happy here.
How come people haven't loved everybody for 2,000 years?
Because they've been mixed up.
Do you take drugs?
No.
Would you ever take drugs?
Yes.
You would?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm experimental.
In America today, certain people are beginning to call themselves revolutionary. I'm a revolutionary, and I'll be a revolutionary when I'm 50. You can disagree with the laws and the books on sexual activity. You can disagree with the prevailing ideas in the university. The question is, how do you make the changes?
Go ahead.
You said the important thing was reason. And I say that when your mother's being raped, when your brothers are being killed, that the only reasonable thing to do is to kick the man who's raping them off, and to kick the man who's killing them off their back, and by any way you can. See, I mean, there's no reason for Vietnam. Vietnam is irrational. There's no reasonable reason for this country to be there. There's no reason for the ghettos and the violent institution of the ghetto. And the only reasonable thing to do is to get those people and those institutions off. And the only reasonable way to do it is any way you can.
Do you think this country, at this time, needs something that it hasn't got?
Yes.
What does it need?
Love. The whole people have to know each other, you know?
What about people older than, say, 30? Older people, do you think they can indulge in this too?
Yes, they should.
Do they?
I don't know if they do, but they should.
What do you think older people think of all this?
Most of them think it's ridiculous.
Why do you think they think it's ridiculous?
Because I don't think it can be done. You know, they don't think people can do it.
Do you think you can manage to do this without the help of, say, grass or LSD?
No.
Do you think this country, at this time, needs something that it hasn't got?
Yes.
What does it need?
Love. The whole people have to know each other, you know?
What about people older than, say, 30? Older people, do you think they can indulge in this too?
Yes, they should.
Do they?
I don't know if they do, but they should.
What do you think older people think of all this?
Most of them think it's ridiculous.
Why do you think they think it's ridiculous?
Because I don't think it can be done. You know, they don't think people can do it.
Do you think you can manage to do this without the help of, say, grass or LSD?
No.
You think you need it?
Yes.
Do you take it?
Yes.
You do. What does it do for you?
I know myself better, and other people I know better.
You're not just taking it for kicks. Do you think it expands your consciousness so you can love everybody?
Not everybody.
Who are those you don't love?
Narrow-minded people.
The generation that grew up in the 30s, the 40s, and so forth, what they wanted was security. They were tired of the war. They were tired of the depression. What we're finding is that you can't just go back into a suburb and sit down and enjoy a cocktail. That this society, the way it functions, demands wars in Vietnam, and that it demands racism, and it demands violence in the ghetto.
From a multitude of tongues come the truth. And when you're not willing to listen to what everyone has to say, you are denying yourself the ultimate truth.
Things have been accomplished by groups, the immigrant groups, the workers who participated in the labor movement, political groups. They accomplish things in groups, and they accomplish them by the exercising of power, not reason but power. If you take a look at the upward mobility of all the immigrant groups, of all the laborers who worked their way up to the middle class, you'll see that they did it by force, not by reason. And so that I think the discussion of reason and of rationality in terms of the American system doesn't apply.
If you got up in the morning and went to work and did a good day's work in the 50s, things got better. You got promoted or you got more money. You were able to buy furniture. You could have more children. The children could have better clothes, and life just improved. We knew it was because you went to work. But I'm not sure our children realized that. They saw simply that the clothes got better, the house got bigger, the neighborhood got nicer. And I have a strong suspicion that what happened in the late 60s was that the kids who rebelled took it for granted that life would improve automatically.
Free. Everything's free.
Everything's free. I mean, I think we stand for the destruction of property.
What will come out of the destruction of property?
That's pure Karl Marx. Are you communist?
Well, am I a communist? I don't know. See, I guess in a way I am, because we were standing in Harvard Square passing out poems, and some cat come up and call us a communist and punch us all in the mouth. So I guess I am a communist too, right?
It's going to come to the point where if we get enough people and we go to the ruling class and we say we don't want capitalism anymore, somehow I think that they're going to say, well, we're not going to buy that. And that's the point where reason isn't going to enter into the situation. That's the point that if they don't let the people of this nation run this nation, that's the point where violence enters into it. And I don't like violence, but it's going to come to that point.
On Democrat Democrats say Kamala Harris is creating a new excitement for voters in Florida. They say this golf cart rally on Saturday in the Villages is just one example of people in Republican strongholds showing support.
We're not going back. We're not going back. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. We're not going back.
I'm pleased to be here with you today to say to all my fellow senior citizens how critical this campaign is to helping those who are similarly situated maintain a good quality of life.
What's the most important policy?
Well, reproductive freedom is number one.
Right, and Kamala Harris is going to protect that?
Yes.
And Donald Trump?
Not going to protect that.
Right, he overturned Roe v. Wade, and do you think that's going to drive young people to the ballot box?
Absolutely do.
But it's also driving you to the ballot
Yes,
box.
I have my grandchildren. I have grandchildren. I have 3 granddaughters, and I am here to protect my granddaughters.
My dad is 87 and sharp as a tack, and one of his brilliant ideas was this: Seniors for Kamala. The issues for seniors are very stark. It's all in Project 2025. They want to take away Social Security benefits, Medicare. The progress we've made on lowering costs for insulin for seniors, $35 a month.
We love Harris in the springtime, and we love Harris in the fall. We love Harris in the winter when it drizzles. We love Harris in the summer.
Hi, I'm Bruce Springsteen. Friends, fans, and the press have asked me who I'm supporting in this most important of elections. I'm supporting Kamala Harris for president and Tim Walz for vice president, and opposing Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Here's why. We are shortly coming upon one of the most consequential elections in our nation's history. Perhaps not since the Civil War has this great country felt as politically, spiritually, and emotionally divided as it does then at this moment. It doesn't have to be this way.
Voting for our freedoms, we're not going back. Control of our own bodies, we're not going back. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we're not going back.
Former Congressman Liz Cheney is.
Former Congressman Adam Kinzinger is. Former Vice President Mike Pence is. Former Senator John McCain's son, Lieutenant Jimmy McCain is.
Voting country over party.
So, Mom, did you watch Kamala Harris's acceptance speech?
I did, and I thought she was incredible.
What did you like about it?
I liked that it flowed, that she had a purpose, and she accomplished it.
What do you think her purpose was?
Unity, love, acceptance, all the good things. I'm voting for Kamala. I believe in the people that tell me the things I want to hear.
Poppy, who are you voting for?
What's your name?
Kamala.
Yeah.
You're not voting for Trump again?
I'm not what?
You're not going to vote for Donald Trump again?
No.
He didn't vote for him last time.
Drop the beat.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never I'm a never Trump guy. I never I'm a never Trump guy. I never
3. Let me tell you why I believe Kamala Harris is the right person to become our president. I'm an 88-year-old mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother who believes in democracy. I believe this woman will lead us in a government process by the people and for the people. She is well qualified, 34 years of political experience, and presently the Vice President of the United States, who can get the job done because she has all this know-how, experience, and has proven she is a believer in democracy. I want all of us to continue to live in a government that is by the people and for the people, and I don't know a better person that can do it. There's Kamala.
All right.
The Heritage Foundation, this Christian conservative state that they imagine, it's different Christianity what we talking about this morning. You understand? This is a theocracy. Remember, the Klan saw themselves as Christians. Al-Qaeda sees themselves as Muslims. And the Klan is to Christianity like Al-Qaeda is to the Muslims. And this group right here is closer to the Klan than they are this word. So I don't even trying to judge nobody's religion. Ain't but one judge, but we all gonna find out in a minute. This mandate for leadership then, Project 2025, is crafted in a notion of decline. A notion that in the last 50 years, this country has declined. And that decline has a direct link to our ascent. This is really a racist document, a deeply racist document.
And I can think of no more critical deed taking place today than that which is found in Trump's Project 2025. And those of us who are senior citizens, we need to take a hard look at some things in that document dealing with Social Security, increasing the retirement age from 67 to 70, not making any differential for what kind of work you do. Think about Medicaid. Medicaid is funded by the federal government. And if you are going to invade Medicaid, if you don't want to expand Medicaid, then it tells me you do not have the sensitivities that are needed to protect senior citizens.
My understanding, based on reports I'm getting from campaigns and communities, is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. That seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly. When you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain and joy that comes from those experiences, and achieves the second highest office in the land, and is putting forward concrete proposals to directly address the things that are vital in our neighborhoods and our communities, from housing, and that's on one side. And on the other side, you have someone who has consistently shown disregard, not just for the communities, but for you as a person. And you're thinking about sitting out? And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that, because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly now, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president.
I'm Ann, and I'm 90 years old.
I'm Elma. I'm 91.
I'm Alma. I'm 90.
I'm Idella, and I'm 99.
I'm Derry, and I'm 92 years young.
I'm Lynette, and I'm 94 years old.
And I'm Fanny, and I'm 87 years old.
And I'm Boyce, and I'm 62 years old.
We are unionized from Union, Alabama, and we're not going back.
They don't understand that the black voter has changed. The further you get away from the black civil rights movement, African Americans less self-identify. So guess what? You got to court black people. You got to talk to them. You got to spend more. You can't simply assume that you're going to reach the black voter in 2024 the same way you did in 1984, 1994, 2008.
Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Culture. I am one of your co-hosts, Quisha King. Hey, everybody in the chat. So glad to be back with you. I am officially Mrs. Benton. If you have not seen my social media, but things are absolutely wonderful. And I'm still on cloud 9. I had a little migraine earlier, so I'm trying to reorient myself, get myself together. But Shadow Jackson has done it once again. This montage has got me pulling my hair out. So just a couple of notes to get started here. You know, this whole concept of love, and I think I can speak to this, you know, because I just got married. But I think the left and more broadly the world has a wrong concept of what love really is. I don't know what they're talking about, but that ain't love. That looks more like hedonism and just do what thou wilt, and more of, you know, it's your thing, do what you want to do, that kind of stuff. That's not love. You know, love will pull you back when you're going too far. Love says no sometimes. Love says, you know, it doesn't just allow you to indulge in every thought that comes across your mind. You know, there are boundaries to love. That was one of the things that I got out of the montage. I wanted to say too, that couple, the older couple that was up there, and they were like, oh, you know, these kids, these radical kids, they said, you know, the parent, they are rebels now. And here's what I want to say to that old gentleman. The parents failed these kids who are the radicals. So yes, while you were working, you were also supposed to be training your child in the way that they should go, so that when they get older, they don't depart from those ways. But I don't know, you might have missed that part. But I feel bad for these people because they thought, oh, I just got to go to work and, you know, everything else will take care of itself. Turns out the Bible was right. Doesn't quite function. Life doesn't quite function that way. Roland Martin. Oh, Roland. Did I hear him say spin? Did I hear him say that we have to spin? Is he admitting that he spins the news? Okay, that's breaking news right there from Mr. Roland Martin. I have been saying this for quite some time because I saw it in 2020. Two things. I saw black men pulling away from the Democrat Party, and I saw that older people, you could not move. I said, I'm like, don't even waste your time trying to persuade people. I would say, like, you know, 55 plus. That was 4 years ago. So maybe, I don't know, 60 plus. They are very much like Roland Martin said, they are still in the civil rights movement. They still think that stuff is is like dominant. These people still believe that the media is credible. So everything that they hear, they think it's coming from a credible source. So anyway, those are just my preliminary thoughts on these things. Let's go ahead and get into the show. I'm going to bring up my good friend, Mr. Blanchard Robinson. Hey, Blanche, how are you?
What's up, Keish? What's going on? Congratulations, Miss Benton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was like, now I done heard from so many people. Where's my friend? But thank you.
Well, I was trying to let y'all, do your honeymoon thing. I didn't want to, I was trying to wait till you came
All
back to
good.
Earth. Came back to Earth. So
yes. So thoughts on the montage? What you got?
first, I think Roland Martin said that they need to spend money on Black people, like spend money as far as,
Spend.
spend,
not
spend money to get them.
S-P-I-N. Gotcha.
I don't know much about the boomers, but based on that montage, though, I realized that they got tricked a long time ago, and they had an entire movement based on something that wasn't reality. They bought into the propaganda, they bought into the media, like they literally just was taking everything as face value and running with it. They weren't even processing; they just saw it on TV and took off, or somebody told them and they took off. So, their movement, they were doomed from the start. The boomers were. And the girl even admitted to even participate in the love movement, you had to be high. So you factor in, people with low information, people with a need to be intoxicated or to participate in something. And then what the old guy said that you mentioned, the older gentleman, what he said was right, is that in the sense that they don't understand the process. So these boomer generations, they were products of hard work and strong families and everything. So they took it for granted. They thought this stuff just happened through osmosis. So they didn't really see a threat to going against it because it was something that was just natural. It was natural for folks to grow up in these type of housing. Like the guy said, as the years go on, things got better. Houses got bigger, cars got better, just a natural progression in life. So it kind of makes you believe that this stuff wasn't worked hard for. It didn't come from blood, sweat, and tears. So these people really didn't even appreciate it. They were talking about this stuff like it was just a bad thing. And then you had a bunch of commies, young commies, trying to be rebels. My mind went to Happy Days with the Fonz. These people were fake. Yeah. It was a fake. They were fake rebels. Like it wasn't real. Like y'all basing stuff off of stuff you done heard or what somebody done showed you. Stuff wasn't even real. Like, and so I don't know much about the boomers, but I can just say that they got sold a bill of bad goods from the jump. So where they are now, it makes sense. To see them old folks talking now, based on what I just saw, it makes perfect sense. They've been lost in the sauce since then. They ain't been, and the funny thing is, Quisha, as you mentioned, they believe they're still in those times. These boomer people now ain't went through nothing since probably, these folks ain't went through nothing. These folks been living their best life on jobs they've been on for 40 years, good retirements, savings. They got the benefit of all of what America was. With the money portion, with the family portion, they got to see it all and enjoy it. We the ones suffering now. We got to fight to get a house, fight to get a family. They didn't. They reaped all those benefits, and then they raised a bunch of decadent children. But I'm done.
I completely agree. And thanks for getting me straight on that spin and not spin. Let me bring up my good friend, Mr. Teach 'em Chuck, who's famous, I hear. What's going on? You're famous.
You've been gone, Quisha. You came back.
I know. I'm gone for 1 week. and Teach 'em Chuck done blew up. What's going on? Congratulations.
Nah, just a little razzle dazzle, just a little moment. I wouldn't say I'm famous, but there's more to come. Hopefully, get a similar reaction in the future from some posts, some content, things like that. I've been talking to Chad privately, and just trying to figure out some creative ways to try to help, up my profile and, stuff like that. So that's all, just had a little moment, got a little reel, gained some traction, and a couple of popular content creators, did some commentary or even reposted it. So yeah, it really, my Instagram followers jumped up almost 10,000 followers over.
That is amazing. That's
So yeah,
awesome.
but more to come. More to
Yeah.
come. You know.
Listen, I think we all saw it, in the beginning. I remember talking to you privately before we went on. I'm like, don't lose the hat, don't keep the look. When people start hearing what you got to say, you're gonna mess everybody's mind up. And I think you are on your way. Long overdue, my friend, long overdue. But what you got
We'll see.
on
We'll see.
the
I got some.
montage?
We got some things. Got some things working out right now behind the scenes. So yeah, we'll see. I'm just we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But anyway,
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, no big deal. Wow, that montage was something else. This guy. Yeah, every time I see Bruce Springsteen, I just want to throw up. I mean, he's been Bruce Springsteen. I mean, his whole life. I think he was from Jersey. I think it is. I can't even think of many Bruce Springsteen songs off the top of my head. Of course, Born in the USA is the first one that comes to mind. And if anybody's familiar with Born in the USA, or if even bothered to listen to the song, it's a very subversive song. It's not a hat tip to America. It's a slap in the face to the country. And that was the whole point of it. It's just sort of like this anti-Vietnam War screed disguised as something patriotic, but you have to really listen to the words. He's been a leftist probably his whole life. The lady sitting there going on and on about democracy. I'm looking at the old folks. God bless them. I hope to one day be almost 100 years old. But it's just sad. She's sitting there going on and on about democracy, this lady, and I'm just wondering to myself, does she even know what the term democracy means? Can she even spell it? I'm being dead serious. This pastor's up there. He's talking about Al Qaeda are to Muslims what the Ku Klux Klan were to Christians, and then talking about conservative Christians, referring to them as something tantamount to the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan, Al Qaeda, not even in the same. I mean, just anyway, we don't even need to get into the background of where Al Qaeda came from and the Mujahideen and the Marxist takeover of Afghanistan and what that whole fiasco was about. But again, it's another ignorant Black person sitting or standing at a lectern, just spouting off a bunch of nonsense. I forget the guy's name there. We're sitting there talking about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare.
From South Carolina.
I'm drawing a blank on his name, Quisha. Anyway. Just a fraud. I mean, talking about Social Security, just the biggest Ponzi scheme going in America, and it's legal, if you could believe
James
that.
Clyburn. That's it.
James Clyburn. Thank you. Just a giant Ponzi scheme, just like much of the measures that were taken up by the FDR administration. It's just a complete house of cards, and we are still reaping the what we have sown for what took place during that tragic decade of the 1930s. And again, we didn't even talk about the 1960s. We're talking about the 1930s. But anyway, and then lastly, I wrote a lot of things down. But then lastly, this whole talk about talking about Union, Alabama, where I don't know if it's a city in Alabama called Union, and they too are union workers. Perhaps the city is called Union because of its legacy of unionized labor. I'm not exactly sure, but unions, once again, this is another reason why I say the things that I say when it comes to just the Republican umbrella, the Republican tent, and how it is expanding. Because this whole influx, we talk about Donald Trump galvanizing, blue collar workers or the working class, or he has unions on his side and so on and so forth. It's very eyebrow raising to me, because I have nothing nice to say about unions. You talk about just a false narrative where the unions are the heroes once again, and then we have this negative stereotype of the so-called robber baron of the 19th century and the early 20th century. Until big labor, and again with the even beginning before FDR under Hoover and so on, that we finally had labor kind of push back against the big time mega, the Rockefellers and the Andrew Carnegies of the world and so on and so forth. Just a complete and utter distortion of what actually took place from the Industrial Revolution leading up to the roaring 20s as they were. But yeah, interested. Can't wait to get into the meat of the conversation. So let me pass it off to Chad, and we get this thing rolling.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chad O. Jackson, our fearless leader. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Quisha?
I am good, doing good. So, what inspired this this topic?
What's your name?
Benton, Mrs. Quisha Benton.
What's your name though? Like, what's your full name?
Quisha Benton.
What's your middle name? Is my question.
My middle name is actually Quisha. Don't ask me what my first name is. I'm not.
What's your first name? Like, what's your real name? Like your government name?
No, it is my real name. Keisha's my real name.
No. Like, what's the name on your birth certificate?
Not gonna get it. Never gonna get it. Never gonna get it.
I bet it's something. I bet it's something black.
Never gonna get it.
That name. Woo! If Keisha's the middle name, boy, that first name is.
Actually, no, it's not. It's not bad. It's just I've never gone by anybody ever called me that. What's that?
Like an older name?
Like Pearl.
Yeah.
Gertrude.
Matilda.
Miss Pearl. I'm gonna start calling you Miss Pearl. So to answer your question, I think the Obama clip that went viral is the thing that inspired this evening's discussion. I do remember seeing in August and late August, whenever Camilla first threw her hat in the ring, how her team very quickly organized all these Zoom calls, and you had men for Harris, you had women for Harris, white women for Harris, black women for Harris, and one of them was senior citizens for Harris. And I guess anybody who watches my content maybe think that I have this kind of disdain for baby boomers. I don't. I really don't. I know a lot of people who are in that baby boomer age demographic who are sage, who are wise, who are patriots. But unfortunately, as we saw in the montage, there's a lot of them who, in my opinion, kind of ushered in this kind of mass degradation that we see in our society. And it wasn't so much that it was their idea, as Blanche rightly pointed out. They were influenced by propaganda, dating back further than the 1960s. They just so happened to be the generation where it really caught on. And so, the youngsters in the 1960s, they called themselves trying to rebel against their parents, rebel against their grandparents, rebel against the adult society of their day. And they thought that they had it all figured out. They thought they had the world figured out. Little did they know that they were the victims of propaganda. The messaging in the 1960s really encouraged a spirit of self-indulgence, of go your own way, let it all hang out, do what thou wilt. This is what they really harped on. What's interesting about this is that, the baby boomer generation is, in my opinion, the most extractive generation in American history.
You said extractive?
The most extractive generation in American history. And what I mean by that is, you saw in the montage where even their parents acknowledge that these youngsters are entitled. They're just simply entitled. They want everything for free. They think that everything that they had in their suburban lifestyles were, in their suburban communities, were just given to them by the result of wealth distribution by the government, not realizing that no, these people worked for what they had, irrespective of race, irrespective of creed. These people worked for what they had, and it was just as simple as that. But the youngsters didn't see it that way. Many of them thought that their parents were comfortable at the expense of those who were in the ghetto, at the expense of blacks, at the expense of the immigrant, at the expense of, you know, the so-called downtrodden and the marginalized. And so they thought that it was virtuous for them to become a revolutionary, become rebellious against the so-called system, because they wanted to be a part of the so-called movement. And so not only were they extractive and indulgent in their own day, they continue to be extractive and indulgent today, at least the more politically leftist of them, when they advocate for the expansion of Medicaid, the expansion of Medicare, the expansion of Social Security. In other words, they're wanting the taxpayer to flip the bill for their irresponsible lifestyles. And, the world that they built is a world I don't particularly care to live in. When they say we're not going back, I want to go back. I want to go back to where we roll back Medicaid and Medicare, where we roll back Social Security, where we roll back the government's interest in housing, where we roll back the government's interest in education, where we take it back. Like I do want to go back. That's something I want very much so. And you can't get me with the whole, well, what about the fact that y'all used to be in Jim Crow and this, that, and the other? Like, you can't get me with that, because I know enough about history to know, to where that kind of rhetoric just won't fly with me. Unfortunately, it flies with most people, because the narrative that they understand as it relates to history is a false narrative, is a narrative that basically relies upon half-truths and embellishment in order to, I guess, strike enough fear into people to believe that what they're experiencing right now is genuinely progress, to believe that what the rhetoric that's coming out of the mouth of Kamala Harris is progress, to believe that the rhetoric coming out of Barack Hussein Obama's mouth is progress. They believe that these things are progress because they're juxtaposing it against a narrative that they've been sold in their history books, in the entertainment industry, with films and documentaries and movies like Roots, that are supposed to basically instill in you a spirit of fear of the past. But I think it's true also, and I made this point before, and I'm going to make this point one last time, that when it comes to this kind of extractive generation known as the baby boomer generation, when you see a lot of Black folks today, and I've studied enough of this to speak definitively on it, and so too has Thomas Sowell, that when you look at this word or this term that a lot of Blacks today like to throw around, generational wealth, right? And they say that the reason we as Blacks don't have generational wealth is because of slavery and Jim Crow. That's actually contrary to the truth. The fact is, you did have the accumulation of property, the starting of businesses as it relates to Black folks in this country. But the baby boomer, being the extractive generation they are, in many ways decided to liquidate those assets throughout the 70s going into the 80s. And they consumed all of it. They ate all of it. They ate your generational wealth. They spent it on themselves. And it's to that extent that you don't have your generational wealth. It's not because of slavery. It's not because of Jim Crow. It's because of the baby boomer generation. And I'm not trying to build an army against this generation. I'm just telling you the facts for what they are. The fact is, in a civilized world, in a civilized society, and Chuck can speak to this better than I can, the longevity of a civilized society requires selfless people at the familial level. And what I mean by that is, if you are going to indulge in all manner of decadence, all manner of pleasure, at the expense of your family, at the expense of your children and their children, if you're going to do that, and if you're going to encourage everybody of a generation to do that, that is a marking of a civilization that's not long for this world. The only way our society survives is when we consider the nuclear family as a top priority. This idea that me at the individual level have to hold myself accountable, not the government, but myself, have to hold myself accountable when it comes to the caring for, to the nurturing of, to the instilling of values to my children. That's my responsibility to the extent that I am more interested in self-indulgence and less interested in the equipping and instilling and the feeding of my family, then again, this generation is not long for this world. So sure, somebody might argue, well, Chad, from the baby boomer generation on down to Generation Z, baby boomers have taken care of their responsibilities, whether it's, in terms of the fact that they were fed, the fact that they were housed. This all may be true, but it's not enough to provide material comfort. It's equally important, I would argue, to instill values and to instill wholesome lessons, and that's something that the baby boomer generation didn't do, because they themselves did not believe those values. They thought that these were bourgeois values. They thought that these were square values, and they wanted to basically change the world, to revolutionize the world. And it is unfortunately those devalues that we got. So as a result, our society is unraveling, and it's unfortunate. I know I said a lot. I was all over the place. It was probably confusing, but like Chuck, I'm interested in getting into the show.
Good. I saw that Barack Obama clip too, and of course it's going viral, or it went viral, and the audacity, like you can tell, like these people like Barack are not in touch. Like they are just constantly out of touch with, I don't know, regular folk, if that's what you want to call them. The boy in particular, let me play the clip and then we can discuss. Let's see here. Where is Mr. Barack Insane Obama?
I think that clip may have been too long to fit in the drive. So I have to pull it up. Let me do it from my end.
Okay. Well, while he's pulling it up, I mean, Barack is so out of touch. What's that?
No, I said I have the clip
Understanding,
okay,
based on reports I'm getting from campaigns and communities, is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. That seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly. When you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain and joy that comes from those experiences, and achieves the second highest office in the land, and is putting forward concrete proposals to directly address the things that are vital in our neighborhoods and our communities, from housing, and that's on one side. And on the other side, you have someone who has consistently shown disregard, not just for the communities, but for you as a person. And you're thinking about sitting out? And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that, because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly now, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president.
So if you don't get in line, y'all know I've said this, they will get you in line. That's what the left believes. They believe in force. So Barack sees the polls, and I mean, I don't know how he missed it, but black men in particular have been pulling away since his second term. Okay, because a lot of them wasn't with all this LGBTQ stuff. Let's just be 100%. They were not. And so we've seen a steady decline of black men in supporting the left. This idea that Kamala knows the struggles. There it is, y'all, the struggle. We got to have the struggle session. This woman from 12 years old to I think 19 or something, lived in Canada in a upper class neighborhood, very much like Barack. Did not grow up in some kind of struggle life. Her parents were very well-to-do. Okay, let's keep it real. So were Barack's grandparents. All right. So this idea that either one of them have somehow, because that they're Black, they grew up poor, and that's what they want to sell you, that Black equals poor, that you are automatically in some type of inferior because you are Black. Hold on, we have an alarm going off. Hold on.
Jacksonville.
Lord. Anyway, that I have so much more to say, but I don't. Y'all go ahead. Lance, what do you have to say on this? Huh?
You got an intruder?
Yeah, Jacksonville.
The cat last time was getting tormented by my Haitian.
Yes.
Right out of Quisha's house, please.
Well, look, we already had one cat that just ran away, okay? And then the other one was stuck in the laundry room. And I was about to take the poor cat out.
But my sentiment exactly, Quisha, when you said it's just talking about Barack, I mean, just got to talk to the brothers. You know what I mean? He's just such a phony. He's such a phony. I mean, this man, if you know the story of Barack Obama, of course, he was, we're not going to get into the controversy over who his biological father is. But my point is that, of course, he was raised primarily by his white grandparents. And there was a moment in Barack Obama's life where he felt the need to really, I guess, get in touch with his Black side, so to speak. And of course, we've all read and seen and heard the statements that that have been made by his family members that he has over in Kenya still. Just say that, I mean, he has this complete total disregard for that part of his life or that side of his family. But there was an episode where a beggar, I don't know how else to describe the person, approached his grandfather and asked his grandfather for some spare change or something to that effect. And I think the guy was Black, and his grandfather being white, his grandfather declined. And from Barack Obama's, and we know, as we learned from Blanche, that Black folks lie. But Barack Obama claims that was the first time he had really seen this anything, I guess, like racial or there was this. Barack Obama interpreted his grandfather's gesture or his refusal to lend this poor man some spare change. He saw that as his white grandfather's manifest, his dormant, latent racism coming to the surface. And it was because of that, he wanted to seek answers, because I guess his grandparents had never mistreated him. So he wanted to know what was going on with his white grandfather, right? And so he sought out the counsel of Frank Marshall Davis. Now, Frank Marshall Davis and Barack Obama's grandfather were close friends. They would all hang out together. They would all play cards together and these kinds of things. And it's very mysterious in terms of the linkage between Frank Marshall Davis and Barack Obama's maternal grandparents, because truth be told, they were both natives of Kansas. I think Frank Marshall Davis was born, I think, in Wichita, if memory serves me correctly, or I might have it the inverse. But whatever the case is, that they grew up or were born and raised in two separate cities in Kansas, not too far from one another. In some way, somehow, they both mysteriously ended up in Hawaii some decades later. We know that Frank Marshall Davis was sent on orders of the Communist Party to go to the island of Hawaii to help establish Hawaii as as part of the Union. A lot of people don't know that Hawaii as a state, the politicizing and the activism, if you will, that led to the Hawaii gaining statehood. This was a communist plot and a communist ploy. This is, I mean, part of the reason why, you know, Hawaii is still extremely left-wing to this day. Hawaii, in short, was founded by communists, and it was Frank Marshall Davis that helped to accomplish this goal. And so Barack knew that his grandfather had this black friend. And then from there, the story goes, and this is Obama's account of what took place. And that's when he sought out Frank Marshall Davis to get an understanding of why his grandfather would do such a thing, why his grandfather would say such a thing, and to really kind of get in touch or try to find out exactly what it means to be black. And that's when you had Frank Marshall Davis begin to pump all of these ideas into his head before he would go off to Occidental, a few years before he would go off to Occidental College. And, you know, the legend of Barry Soetoro was born. But, you know, Barack Obama was never one of the brothers, his dang on self. That would happen much later. Again, to Barack Obama's own admission, he didn't even know, like he didn't even really see himself as a black man or as a black person until this incident occurred with his grandfather and this beggar on the street. Just thought I'd give you guys a little background history of Barack Obama. And I got more. You know, if there's anybody I know this history in the life of, it's Barack Obama.
I think one thing that's important to note is that when Barack, I forget where, it might have been on Teach 'em Chuck's expose on Barack Obama, where he's talking about how when he was in college, he strategically, you know, got with the Chicanos, and he strategically got with certain groups of people and literally would like become like them in order to befriend them. Basically, my understanding is to kind of get them over to pull them over to his radical
This
ideas.
was from Dreams of My Father.
Yeah, I mean,
in the book, he talks about it openly. So this man is incredibly manipulative. So nothing that he does is not everything that he does is calculated. And I think this particular thing, which was very much calculated, going to speak to the to the brothers and go get them in line, you know, and tell them what they need to do. I think it's kind of backfiring because young people ain't having it. Younger men, particularly black men, are just not. They're starting to question a lot of things. I have a crazy little theory on this. I think part of this is Kevin Samuels. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. But Blanche, what did you have on Barry?
Yeah. So my take on Barack Obama doing what he did it on purpose. He wasn't talking to black men. He was talking to everybody else. So the goal is that you start a civil war in the black community. You start a civil war by making black men the odd man out. So in other words, if the issue is Kamala coming up for election and the one thing standing in the way is black men, now you turn everybody against black men. So you have black women, you have what you call these so-called boomers, you have the white liberals, you have all these folks now putting pressure on black men to vote for Kamala. And so essentially what you're going to do is you kind of like fracture. It's kind of like a weed out process where you weed out all of the bad apples out of the black community. You get rid of all the folks that would be what you call defectors in the black community. You just have all those folks on the island somewhere. So when he's talking in that clip, he's not talking to black men. Think about it. He's telling people why black men aren't doing it. He's not asking. The real reason why black men don't want to vote for Kamala is because of policy. But to avoid, if you notice, he said she's been a person that's been clear where she stands and what she's doing. He's already trying to answer the question. So what he's saying is that if a black man at this point wants to vote for Kamala, then essentially he shouldn't even be a part of the black community. And so to me, just like a communist would do, he wants to disrupt this so-called black structure that we see in America. So I don't think he was talking to black men at all. I think he was talking to every radical person on this in America that would feel the need to tell black men their place and how they should be voting and what they should be voting for. I guarantee that you're going to see an uptick in random people asking black men who they're voting for. I'm telling you, what he's doing is strategic to where he's going to have, it's going to almost start like a kind of fight in between black men having to explain themselves why they're not going to do it, or having to cower back into a corner. But by no means do I think he was really talking to black men. This was very strategic, like reverse psychology. I'm going to tell y'all why black men aren't voting for her. They're not voting for her because they don't want to be led by a woman, when in fact the black community is literally ran by women. What are we talking about? No black man has a problem with that. That's what most black men grew up in, that environment where women run everything. So that's not true. He's trying to tell everybody around to put the squeeze on black men. Now, if you notice what Quisha mentioned, these relationship red pill podcasts, most of these guys are being very vocal about not voting for Kamala Harris. So this is not just, people know that these people, they don't want to say it, but they watch these shows where these black men are like, we're not doing it. Here go the reasons why. And most of them talking about policy, so on and so forth. And so I think Barack Obama was talking to everybody except black men. He don't respect black men enough to speak to black men. He's talking to everybody else. Get these Negroes in line. And if they don't, kick them out.
Wow, I love y'all. I love what we do here. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. And I mean, it does line up with how communists think. It makes me think about Saul Alinsky, and how he describes his tactics, and we see them being played out a lot. Chad, what do you think about what Blanche's idea is about what Barack Obama said in his strategy? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you look at everybody in the room, they had their phones out, so they were filming the little shindig. You also had some professional cameras there. Looks like ABC News's camera was there. So he knew full well that there were cameras in the room. He knew that some of those folks were live streaming. So he was talking past the blacks in the room who are already for Camilla. I mean, you can see the Camilla signs in the background. So they were at one of her campaign offices. Yeah. So it wasn't as if he was talking to a random group of blacks at the barbershop who were iffy about who they're going to vote. No, these were volunteers for Camilla. So this notion that he was talking to a group of blacks who didn't know what they were, who they were voting for is just absurd. I think Blanche is absolutely right. He hit it on the nose. He's talking past them to the larger electorate, who are, I mean, my opinion is that the goal was to try to pass Camilla as someone who is competent enough to be the president of the United States, but we're still stuck in the past where there's a lot of people who don't believe that a woman has what it takes. So let us now bring in Barack Hussein to tell not only blacks, but also everyone else why it's time. That here I am, the guy who was able to electrify so much energy in 2008, the one who was able to amass such a large online campaign through MySpace and through, the early days of Facebook. Here I am, who are telling you all that Camilla is the next me, is my opinion. But it's interesting, particularly as it relates to young black men, because when you look at someone like a Barack Hussein, he's not exactly popular among a lot of black men, and he's losing that favorability. A lot of the excitement around Obama, even back then, was manufactured. At least its an inception point was manufactured. Sure, it took off and it kind of took on this kind of organic feel, but the early days of the Barack campaign was very much fabricated and manufactured. But now a lot of that is beginning to wane now that we've experienced what an Obama presidency looks like. And Jeremiah Wright, the Reverend who he threw under the bus in the early days of his campaign there in 2008, doesn't particularly like Barack Hussein, and he's verbalized that on a number of occasions in the past few years. Umar Shoemaker, Dr. Umar Johnson, has Jermaine Shoemaker has verbalized some criticism of Obama, and Kevin Samuels, even though he didn't outright critique Barack Hussein, the kind of mindset that Kevin Samuels talked about, I think, is at odds with how Barack presents himself, namely that he's always playing second fiddle to Michelle. He's always talking about Michelle in such a way that she's the rock star. I'm just kind of here, you know. She cooks better than me. She this better than me. She raises children better than me. Like he's always basically, you know, uplifting her and self-deprecating himself. And, you know, sure, we read in Philippians that we should be seeking to outlove one another, or the first shall be last and the last shall be first. But the way that he does it isn't from a biblical perspective. It's from this kind of cringy feminist perspective. Mm-hmm. And so the embodiment of Barack Hussein is at odds with the things that Kevin Samuels talked about, even though I'm pretty sure I can think of some times where Kevin Samuels, the late Kevin Samuels, when talking about high value men, may have mentioned Barack Obama as an example of a high value man. But, you know, he was a flawed human being who was right about a lot of things, but was wrong about that. Anyway, I mean, Barack Hussein is somebody who is a Marxist and has never had a real job a day in his life. His early days was that of becoming a community organizer. He was an attorney, yes, but his real passion was being a community organizer, not for the sake of community organizing in the thrill of it, but rather because he understood that organizing the proletariat is necessary for a larger Marxist goal. And so anyway, all that to say, Barack Hussein is falling out of favor with people who realize that the whole thing was just a ruse. Now, I said all that, but let me now say this, and I'll finish by saying this, that when you consider the fact that there are a large number of Black men in particular who, at the leadership of such figures as Jeremiah Wright or Umar Johnson, are, falling out of love with Barack Obama, I would argue that they're falling out of love with Barack Obama still isn't principled, because they're still following people like Jeremiah Wright and Umar Johnson, So I mean, do we call that a victory? I don't know. I would hope that people would come to know Christ, but I know that today's Republican Party likes to try to take victories anywhere they can get them. So do with that what you will.
Before we move on, I do want to ask Chuck about Blanche's take. If you were a communist, and you were going in to speak to the Bliggity men, would you do what Barry did? Is that what you would do? What do you do? And then what do you think about what he said? And what Blanche's take is?
I think Blanche is on to something. I think Magic Johnson, I think he said it. He was a little bit more, I guess, forthright and just flat out said, "Hey, we got to get these, we got to get these Black men in order. They getting out of control." I think Blanche is right. You got Barack Obama sitting there, and yeah, it's a battle cry. It's a call to arms for the Wranglers to go ahead and lasso these Negroes and pull them back. I don't know. I mean, it's funny too, because a lot of political commentators and pundits like to talk about how Barack Obama really doesn't have that carryover, or how do they describe it? He doesn't have that coattail appeal. And I think to some degree, I think Donald Trump probably struggles with that as well, because both of them, and I'm not trying to compare and contrast, but my point is that I don't know if that, once Trump leaves the political stage, I do think the Republican Party, for what it's worth, I think will have been left better off than prior to his ascension. But there's only one Trump, and I think Barack Obama is similar in this way. He can't make you, or particularly to Democrat voters, he can't, or independents, right? Is the ones they try to say, well, these are that middle group there is the group that kind of sways elections one way or the other. Because, you know, Republicans, Democrats, I mean, they're so locked in. They really don't cross the aisle, as the saying goes, too much. But when it comes to Barack Obama, he's a taint, right? Anyone that he endorses, anytime he comes out and speaks on someone's behalf, Barack Obama's endorsement hasn't meant much. We even saw that when he was in office, and how, you know, I mean, Democrats across the board, state, local, and federal, for 8 years were just eviscerated. You know, we saw the Tea Party movement. We saw all this stuff. We just saw this rebel and this rebuke of Barack Obama. And I think Obama he's kind of sort of tired of the same old tropes. And, you know, they trot him out there and he goes out there like a good soldier and says whatever it is that he thinks that he needs to say. But I see Barack Obama pretty much struggling to find the words because he just doesn't know what to say anymore. It's funny because even when you look at the Democrat Party is still struggling. They have an identity as far as their ideology is concerned. But as far as having a good spokesman or spokesperson to convince the public to kind of go along with this agenda, I mean, who is it? Is it Elizabeth Warren? Is it Kamala Harris? Is it Bernie Sanders? Is it, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? I mean, who is it, right? Barack Obama, he's one of a kind. It's just him. Kamala Harris is not Barack Obama, and everybody knows it. And I think Barack is just sitting there like, man, y'all want me to try to get this woman over? I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to say. You see him, he's standing there, yeah, we got to, the brothers, it's like he's struggling to even find a word. I don't even think Barack Obama knows what to say. Again, they just drag him out there, and then there he goes. Same old, you know, platitudinous, same old cliches about democracy, and the conservatives are trying to roll us back and take us back and put us back in chains. Just more of the same. And, you know, Barack Obama, I think he's just, he's at a loss. He really doesn't know what to say. Not just when it comes to Kamala Harris, but just in general. Because, I mean, the left, their act wears thin after a while. Once people see exactly, at least people who still are somewhat rational and sane and have a decent bit of wit about them, they get their fill of it very quickly. And I don't even think Barack Obama knows how to sell this anymore.
I think that is another great point that I think we started to see, like I said, in his second term. We saw it with Hillary Clinton. We saw it with Joe Biden, and we're seeing it now for sure with Donald Trump running again. Black men pulling away, and Black people in general just starting to that you know, perfect for the topic of the show, because we just don't see younger people buying into this whole idea that we just have to be that if you're Black, you have to be a Democrat anymore. Like with the opening up of Twitter, now X, with information being more available, with people just distrusting you know, these institutions that we have had a lot of trust with. The older generations, they are still hanging on. They think that ABC is legitimate news. They don't see anything wrong with what David Muir did with the debate between Camilla and Trump. They don't see anything wrong with any of, you know, the manipulation. They don't see anything wrong with these people being activists and not journalists. I don't even know if they realize that there is a difference. And so, but younger people are like, they got questions, and I am here for it. I am here for it.
It's going to take.
Go ahead.
I want to say one. So, in what y'all mentioned about like not being having the influence, like with Barack Obama, obviously with Michelle Obama, I see these sites trying to pump them up, trying to repost them and make them. It's just not working, because you go through the comments and folks is like, "We still not voting for her." Like it's just right. So, you know, I think that they're trying to at this point make her seem like she's not a Democrat. So when she went on The View, she said that I'm going to hire I'm going to have some Republicans. So she said, I'm not going to let party get in the way of a good idea. So I see when they're talking about her, she's the change candidate. They're trying to make her stand alone, like she's not a Democrat. She's kind of this new creation of politician where we just want to do what's right. We just want to put America first. I'm not opposed to the Republicans. I like Republicans. I'd invite them over to dinner. Just all this stuff. And so they know that the Democratic, just the name of it is kind of mud. They know this. The only way to sell this product is to create this new, let Kamala be this new type of dope with Waltz going out hunting with a BB gun. I mean, just all kind of.
She's like pink cocaine. She's like like Diddy's pink cocaine, a new dope.
I'm like, because the problem is that they're trying to sell this product and it's just not working, man. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't see this much pushback against Biden. Like Biden had pushback, but this Kamala pushback. You can't post something without I'm still voting for them. They don't even argue. I'm still voting. Right. Even like Trump button push like right here, like
exactly.
Because that shrill shriek, that tone. It just whenever she opens her mouth, it literally just sends it's like nails on a chalkboard. If you take a fork and take the prongs and a fork and take it against a porcelain plate and just scrape it, she is just grating to listen to. She's just a very, very unlikable person. She's very off-putting. She's very, very unlikable.
No personality. Like she don't
no
have
personality. No.
She just doesn't have an it factor. She's just
yeah. And you have it or you don't. Some people just aren't really built for the national stage. Some people make good, state politicians, perhaps, the governor's mansion is as far as they go. But it's just some people, when they get to that level, when you get to the big leagues, it sort of changes for you a little bit. I mean, you have to have a certain type of thing going on about you. And whatever that thing is, she just doesn't have it. You know what I mean? It's terrible.
Yeah. But I do want to get your thoughts, Chuck, on if you were a communist and you had to talk to the Bliggities. I want you to tell me, what would your strategy be? Would it be like the Barack, like kind of like what Blanche said, like I'm really going to be speaking to disrupt? Like, what would knowing all that you know about how the dirty commies work, what would you do?
Well, I mean, I would be saying the exact same things that they're saying now, or take, for example, I would be saying a lot of the same things that someone like Jermaine Shoemake, aka Dr. Umar Abdullah Johnson, is saying. Seriously, I think that's his middle name, Abdullah, if I'm not mistaken. But I would be saying those sorts of things, because sort of like I mentioned last time, Quisha, you weren't here on the show. I think with a lot of blacks, they're starting to see black liberals for what they are. But the problem is that many of the blacks who are now rebelling against the black liberal establishment, they themselves aren't changing. They just don't see the fruit that they were promised from the labor of the so-called representative. And so they see the black liberal leadership class. They are beginning to see them as these kind of sellouts to, the Democrat Party, sellouts to Democrat Party politics, because make no mistake about it, the revolution at a point has to reach its conclusion. If you really want to look at Marxism as this linear flow of history, as they describe it, right? Of course, when you understand Marxism, when you really get into the throes of it, you really understand that, of course, it's not a progression, it's a regression back to try to bring man back to his state of bring him back to the true state of nature, so to speak. But of course, the way Marxism works, you must always divide the group against itself to define a new margin. And so once you discover a margin, a marginalized group, you move the margin to the center, and then you divide that group against itself so you can identify a new margin so that you can carry the revolution on to its next phase. The Black liberal class, they are now seeing the revolution is beginning to come for them, because a lot of these, bliggity Black spokespersons, whether they be in the form of these pseudo fake intellectuals like the man I just mentioned, still don't know where he got his doctorate from. Even entertainers, you're seeing entertainers, comedians, Eddie Griffin. I mean, I can go on and on and on. These entertainers, they are still just as racially conscious and as racially idolatrous as they've always been. They haven't just overnight become, the sort of reincarnations of Edmund Burke. That's not what they are. They are the same as they were yesterday. But they are saying, move out of the way, Barack Obama and others. Let us handle it. Let our energy and let our voice come to the forefront. Because essentially, your leftward lurch, you aren't radical enough, because what they want is a complete overthrow and a complete overhaul of the system. We like Trump because he gave out stimulus checks. He gave us money, so we want more money. They're bringing in immigrants and such and so forth, and the immigrants are getting all the benefits. We want the benefits and all this and that. And so again, they're seeing the likes of Barack Obama as sellouts, because these people aren't the revolutionaries that they claim to be. And so this is what a lot of these Blacks who claim that they aren't voting for Kamala, they aren't becoming more conservative. They're just sort of, again, becoming ever more disenchanted with their leadership for breaking, quote unquote, breaking these promises. And so to end it, Quisha, if I were a communist, and this is what I would be saying. I would be getting just as radical, just as revolutionary. And instead of just saying, well, the whole edifice of white supremacy, lump your Black leadership in with them, right? And then again, go for the whole kit and caboodle so that you can then go on to replace it. Just keep ramping up the same racial rhetoric that you've been doing, and call the likes of Barack Obama, call them sellouts. Hold their feet to the fire, call them to the carpet. And you'll get a lot of Blacks who will believe it. And I think that's what a lot of Blacks believe now.
That's why what Blanche said is so spot on, because I've heard Black men literally say that, like, yo, I was feeling Trump, but my mom was pressuring me and I just voted for Biden, or I just voted for Hillary. Just whatever. I'm a girl, that pressure. That is so interesting to me, because it says a lot. Not to keep harping on this, I'll hit this last point and then we can go on to the next clip. But it shows you how weak Black men can be. Like, why, if you know that what you're doing is right and it's not vibing with you, it's not good for you. It is literally not good for the survival of yourself and your family. But you are pressured. I don't know. Does it take us back to the garden? Is this just like another garden moment? Like, here, honey, eat from the tree.
This is why, Quisha, I'm not in favor of this. They keep using the term democracy. Chad even said in the past that they keep calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy. Chad says he wishes that he was an actual threat to democracy. And I guess that might go over a lot of people's heads when they hear it initially. But this again, radical democracy. I use the term populism and such and so forth. You're beginning to see it now, whereas this rebuke against the establishment. But there has to be some sense of understanding what's going on and what should we do moving forward. And like I mentioned in the past, what did it take for us to get here? Because considering the fact that you inherited something that you have the responsibility to maintain so as to pass it on to those that come after you, it does not belong to you in order for you to destroy it. You have a responsibility. And so again, people have to be mindful of when they need to pull the reins up a little bit, because I think that is part of the reason why we are where we are now. When you're talking about the baby boomers, again, I'm just trying to remember, did I say something about this before? But I'll just say it now, that I think in this, I mean, the baby boomers, mid 1940s to mid 1960s, these were your baby boomers, right? This is the post World War II generation, and it's hard to really understand the baby boomers without really understanding how vital and how pivotal, not just the civil rights movement, but how pivotal the war in Southeast Asia was at the time. There wouldn't have been what they call a new left, or what we call, the baby boomer generation. There probably wouldn't have been, or at least not in a way in which we understand that particular era or that particular age cohort, without the geopolitical backdrop of the war in Southeast Asia. But again, it's just so much to consider when you think about it, because after World War II, and I talked about the book that was published by the Swedish economist Gunnar Myrdal called An American Dilemma. Even the Brown versus Board of Education decision, if you go into it, you look it up and do the research. As I mentioned before, the Dahl study is what led to Justice Warren's write-up and opinion, with regard to Blacks and how they need to be in schools amongst whites, because being amongst Blacks was hurting their self-esteem, which was in turn hurting or undermining their educational prospects, right? But they also, this is the Supreme Court, also took into account, because we had to rely upon the writings of the authorities. This is what Justice Warren talked about, the authorities. Even in that psychological study, but also the authority that he was referring to was the authority of a Swedish economist by the name of Gunnar Myrdal. So you had this shift in the 1940s from this kind of early 20th century liberalism that was predicated upon scientific or racial Darwinism, and it became something completely different. And you even saw with the UN's publication in 1948 of their Declaration of Human Rights. Now, people, you got to think, because when you're talking about this issue of states' rights and the rights of every particular or every sovereign nation versus this newly emerging concept of transnationalism that sort of rose out of the ash heap of the destruction of the Second Great War. How do we prevent another world war, where we have to disincentivize national loyalties and embrace what even Chad O. Jackson and the rest of us here on this show refer to as this kind of global Marxism? And then that began to trickle into the developed nations, where you even had presidential candidate Hubert Humphrey in 1948 say outright that we must do away with states' rights and embrace human rights. Now, what does human rights mean? Now, go back when I talked about democracy, populism, human rights. What does that mean? And so we're starting to twist and distort and pervert the meaning of these words and these concepts, because we didn't create this nation based upon these ideas. We built this nation based upon something that was different. But but we took these terms like liberalism, secular government, all these things, and we, after World War II, we distorted them, we twisted them, and they became something else. Anyway, if you want more information on that, go and watch my YouTube video, The Rise of the German Mind, where I talk about this. But this was the soil in which the baby boomers were born out of, this new paradigm of transnationalism and this notion of human rights over a separate kind of right that in their minds enshrined and protected vis-a-vis law and politics, all of this oppression and bigotry and inequality was ingrained in the very things that had come to define this nation. So we had to change that. We had to do away with that. So everything, the whole liberal paradigm shifted in the 1940s, and the word itself, the concept of liberalism itself became something different. This is why liberalism today is defined, it is seen as something radical, something completely different from what it was in the 18th century.
Yeah. Let's get into this other clip.
Free. Everything's free.
Everything's free. I mean, I think we stand for the destruction of property.
What will come out of the destruction of property?
That's pure Karl Marx. Are you communist? Well, am I communist? I don't know. See, I guess in a way I am, because we were standing in Harvard Square passing out poems, and some cat come up and call us a communist and punch us all in the mouth. So I guess I am a communist too, right?
Well, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it might be a duck. I want to play one more too. That is, I think, is in the same line with that.
It's going to come to the point where if we get enough people and we go to the ruling class and we say we don't want capitalism anymore, somehow I think that they're going to say, well, we're not going to buy that, and that's the point where reason isn't going to enter into the situation. That's the point that if they don't let the people of this nation run this nation, that's the point where violence enters into it. And I don't like violence, but it's going to come to that point.
I mean, we see Susie Q in the comments with the ducks. We see this same idea, you know, of I think it's kind of like what Chuck was saying, the twisting of the terms. He's like, if we don't let the people run this country, then things are gonna be a big old mess, because we the people, right? Like, this is a bottom up from our Constitution. This is a bottom up society, totally different from
Huh? You hear how they talk now, even in conservative circles. You're hearing this. We are anti-establishment. We're against the establishment. And I remember listening to Chad and Blanchard's show from last week when I had to bounce out early. And Chad said that he's against these slogans, the way they, you know, Chad could probably better explain it. I won't butcher what he said, but he explained it beautifully why he's opposed to these. I mean, he understands why slogans come about and what, you know, but just when you go into it and you go deeper and you go in a level or two, you start to really see how sloganeering as a general rule is very, very problematic. And so you're starting to hear it now, even amongst conservatives, that we are the people. We are against the establishment. We are against the elites. Well, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that simple sloganeering, because I'm not confident that you even know what you mean, that you even know what you're talking about. Who or what are you talking about? Let the people run. Who are these people? What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, it is very, very much how the enemy, the devil, operates. You know, it's an illusion. You know, it makes you think. It sounds right. Mm-hmm. We the people, built from the bottom up. You know, we're supposed to be telling these people what to do. You know, all of that thing. It sounds real good, but what you really mean by that, and who's actually saying it, you got to know those details.
Gotta know the details.
Gotta know those details. Chad, what do you have on this idea of you know, this language flipping and how these in the clips, you know, they're like, everything should be free, and you know, they're calling me a communist. I'm just passing out poems in the street. Like, what are they talking about? I get punched in the face. And notice too, he said, now, and this is very popular with the left, I don't want to get violent, but try me not, basically. But I will if I have to.
Well, I mean, in keeping with those two clips that you played was the one when there's a young Barry Goldwater supporter and a young LBJ supporter, although he probably wasn't an LBJ supporter. He probably thought LBJ was too well, no, the guy, yeah, he probably thought that LBJ wasn't liberal enough.
That's what I mean.
You had these two, you had these two guys that were going at it, and the young Barry Goldwater supporter says, you know, we campaigned for Barry Goldwater. We left school and skipped school so we can go and hand out you know, flyers trying to get him elected, and we worked really hard to get him elected. And when we didn't prevail, I mean, we thought that was fine. You guys, on the other hand, if you don't get your way, you want to resort to violence. And the young man responded to him by saying, well, you know, you guys are in charge right now, so we have to be violent. We have to get radical. We have to basically become extreme in order to, in a sense, and of course I'm using my own words, but to get your boot off of our neck, we need to get creative in terms of how we remove the oppressor, as it were. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure this young man came from a upper middle class background, but I digress. The fact is, again, I hate to do this, but I'll go back to what the old man was saying. Who would have been the same age as the baby boomers' parents when he said, "Look, everything we've had, we worked for. It was because of our hard work that we were able to buy better clothing for our kids, move into nicer houses, buy nicer cars. This didn't just happen. It happened because we worked hard." But the fact is, when it comes to the young folks in the clips that you played Quisha, and the one that I'm listening now, is a lot of these youngsters were made to believe, whether it be through education, the colleges that they were going to at the time, rhetoric, a lot of the music, that was, I guess, the thematic soundtrack of their day. Some songs by Bob Dylan and others. It impressed upon them this notion that the imbalance in society is not due to the fact that some people work harder than others, but rather that there is an injustice when it comes to the redistribution, or to the distribution of wealth, and therefore the way in which wealth is distributed needs to be reconsidered. And you had a lot of rhetoric that was basically echoing this point, and it sounded really Marxist depending on who it was that was saying it, and it sounded very moderate and neutral depending on others who were saying it. For example, where Stokely Carmichael would say that we need to tear the whole system down, we need to just burn it all down, Martin Luther King would say, well, we just need a revolution of values. They're both saying the same thing. One sounds moderate, the other sounds Marxist and radical, but they're both saying the same exact thing. And so think about this inundative kind of targeting from all angles that's going on in the 1960s. And of course, you have these kids in the middle of it all, and they're getting all of this rhetoric. And rather than seeing the hard work of their parents being the key to success, they see this notion of, it's not fair that there's some people who are poor and others who aren't. And we need to basically radicalize the system and change it all from within. We're releasing a movie early next year, and shameless plug here. And I'm actually going to be hosting a private screening of the film next month, not tomorrow, but the Monday after, where we talk a lot about this stuff. We talk a lot about this generation, the baby boomer generation, and not only that, but the messaging that was trying to basically push the pendulum, as it were, to basically artificially manufacture and motivate this kind of revolution, as it were. But this is a history that's slept on. A lot of people don't really talk about it, with the exception of Chuck and myself and maybe a few others. And unless and until you really understand this era and the messaging that was going on in this era, you won't understand what's going on right now. I know, Quisha, you said it, and I agree with you to a large extent, that a lot of the parents dropped the ball in those days, but it wasn't just that. It was intentional messaging. And of course, I think the baby boomers have themselves to blame because we're all responsible for our own actions. But you had a lot of moving parts around that time that is worth, at the very least, assessing and understanding, if that makes sense.
I 100%. I agree. No, I don't. It's hard. I mean, I'm a parent. I understand how hard it is, competing with culture, which is why I say that Christians, we should have been leading in culture. Instead, we pull back. I don't want to get involved with that cultural stuff. I'm not gonna, I don't want to make music or art, or, I don't want to be involved in that, but occupy until I come, right? That's why we were supposed to be leading, Christians are supposed to be leading in these things. So because if we don't, something that is not like something that we don't want is going to fill that void. So yeah, no, I get it. I totally do. It's tough. It's really hard. And it's harder now to compete with the culture stuff because kids have phones and they have, they're just inundated with all of this stuff. One thing I was going to bring up was all these things, these really important shifts came like all at the same time. And it's like, you had the Civil Rights Act in the 60s, you had the Free Love Act in the 60s, you had the, God coming out of the classrooms in the 60s. And then, 73, we had Roe v. Wade. So it was a lot going on for sure.
And this was, and let it not be lost on anyone that this was worldwide. Well, especially across the West. I mean, you even had uprisings in Central and Eastern Europe as well against the Soviet Union in the 1960s. But the year 1968 is regarded as the World Revolution of 1968 because you saw uprisings all over the world, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well, particularly in France, where their riots were just as, if not more, violent than ours were. So this was happening. Yes.
And we saw that in 2020. We saw the entire world protesting, for George Floyd all across Europe, everywhere people were, Black Lives Matter, I can't breathe, George Floyd. And again, it was all based on propaganda. So just like it was in the 60s, you had artists joining this so-called revolution. You had everybody was participating in this whole thing. That's how it works. Where you start controlling the messaging. And so we fast forward in 2020, think about all the corporations that were giving the Black Lives Matter. Think about everybody that got on board with George Floyd. It was almost like, this is why I say a lot of this stuff is orchestrated because it's too easy for everybody to just jump on this thing and piggyback off of it. Everybody's talking point was what happened to George Floyd was wrong. Nobody wanted to look into it. What are the facts? It was wrong. It was almost like we have an event here nobody can deny. So, same thing with the, I guess, Vietnam War. Their whole thing was, well, we can't get it with the Vietnam War is wrong, and we just say war is wrong. You all agree that war is wrong? The moment you say yes, you're going to lose the argument. Just like somebody says, the America racist, the moment you say yes, you lost the argument. Because it's the same way with this whole George Floyd thing. Is what happened to George Floyd wrong? Once you say yes, then you lose the argument because it's a whole springboard of narratives and propaganda that come off of that. And so, I don't know. I think, like you said, Quisha, it's worse now just because this propaganda is at your phone. At least back in the day, you had to sit down and watch TV. You had to stop, at least you had to actually stop what you was doing to do it. Now you can just do it, working out, like it's constant propaganda and brainwashing, and it never stops. The baby boomers really, I never looked into it, but I'm really disgusted by them, and I almost, I imagine the people crossing the street, and I'm just, got my car, I'm like, but I'm just saying they really disgust me because they know what it took to get where they were in life. They know it took hard work, it took sacrifice, they know this. So to even, I don't know, man, it's disgusting.
I told my mom, I was like, this is y'all's fault. I was like, y'all was all free love and free sex and, it's your thing, do what you want to do. I was like, it was you.
Right. And see the socialist narrative, these intellectuals, particularly like in the Ivy League in the North and in the East Coast, they have been peddling this, talk Harvard, Columbia, Yale. This goes back to the 1910s, 1920s. When you saw with what happened at the three devastating events from the First World War to the Great Depression and then you had the Second World War. A lot of in the minds of a lot of Americans, and this is true of the youth, especially because we're talking about the baby boomers. They firmly came to believe that capitalism was like this dying system, because the moment the Great Depression occurred, right? Especially when you had, I don't want to give away too much, because I don't want to take the conversation down that path too much when you start talking about the 1930s. But immediately, once Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected in 1932 and sworn in 1933, he was off to the races. And you had the progressive propagandists at the time who were running cover for Roosevelt, sort of, blaming, again, trying to make it seem as though the United States was by and large or largely fixed by his taking over in many respects of the private sector. And then from that point forward, the myth of FDR was born. And so you had this idea by the time the 1960s rolled around that, they saw what their parents had went through and their grandparents and so on and so forth. And never again was that to occur, because from wars to Great Depressions, all of these were symptoms and byproducts of a capitalist system that was predicated upon greed and exploitation and all these things. And in order for business folk, merchants, entrepreneurs to go into these third world peripheral societies, you had to have, government kind of clearing ground for the purpose of extracting resources that can then be shipped to these core economic zones for the purpose of the commoditizing of high tech and high price goods and so on and so forth. So it kind of feeds into this whole idea of this kind of global or international inequality. Even again, going back to 1916, go and read Vladimir Lenin's book called Imperialism, where he tries to excuse away or why there hasn't been communist revolutions in these highly industrial nations like the United States, Great Britain, Germany, and so on and so forth, because Vladimir Lenin talked about how imperialism in its modern day form was capitalism at its highest, or the highest form or expression of capitalism was this imperialism that he saw that was pretty much keeping the working class or the proletariat in these industrial core zones. It was keeping them at bay, right, and pacifying them, so to speak. And so you had these ideas in the minds of people, and it was just stewing, it was festering for a very, very long time. There was this anti-capitalist, anti-private market, anti-individualism, and anti-individualist spirit in the American consciousness for a long time, but it doesn't get talked about enough because I don't know if enough people were paying attention to it. But you had journalists, academics going on and on and on, beginning way back in the 1910s. But again, it really began to ramp up during the 1930s. And I think the baby boomers were the expression of this fear that the world was undergoing some massive change, and that capitalism, for example, and everything that is related to it, and that everything that stems from it was on its way out. And they wanted to be part of the vanguard that was bringing in this new world, because a lot of people really take for granted a lot of the tragic events that occurred in the early 20th century that really did a number on people psychologically. And I think the propagandists of the day really took great advantage of it.
Blanche, will you read our super chats, please?
Oh, really? Knowledge is taught, experience is wisdom. Thank you, oh, really, for the super sticker or super chat. Wax gifted Chattel Jackson 5 memberships. Thank you, Wax.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rechurched became a YouTube member. Thank you,
Nice.
Rechurched. Sorry about that. Jesus loves you. God bless the chat. Quisha, Chuck, Chad, and Blanche. Thank you so much. Cruise Missile, thank you so much for the super sticker. Christian Johnson, wow, this is the first time I've been able to catch the show live. Keep doing great work, Chuck. What would it take for you to do a daily show / podcast?
Up a check.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Look, I'll be your PR. A check, sir. You can hit me up. We'll negotiate that.
No, real talk though, man. Just busy with life. Just parenthood and working, and I just don't have the time. I just don't. You know what I mean? If I could take a break and focus on just doing this and wouldn't have to work so much, if I had maybe like a few grand, you know, to give myself a little cushion, I could take some time off of work, I could chill for a little while, and I could really get my feet going or get the ball rolling with this. I could do it, but I haven't reached that point yet. But you know, in due time, maybe.
A lot of work.
It takes too much work.
I don't know how Chad does it, honestly. I really don't.
I don't know either.
Blanche goes live way more than I do. I think Blanche goes live like every other day.
Yeah, I don't know how Blanche does that. Well, Blanche is single though, so I give him him a little bit more leeway. You got 4 kids and a wife, so I definitely don't know how you.
And I sell drugs, so it's easy for me to have time. It ain't hard. Vintage Goods Willie, Roots, the Next Generation, Black Tears, White Guilt. Thank you, Vintage Goods Willie.
That's the sequel coming up.
Are they doing well? Didn't they come up with a new Roots like in the early 2000s?
Oh God, please no.
Didn't they? They kind of
they did remake.
I think they on tour or something. I think they performed yesterday here.
They did, and Roots. My daughter watched like the whole thing. Like she watched it.
Roots on Ice.
Oh, the new Roots show, you mean?
Yeah. They redid Roots.
Yeah,
and that's the thing, like
anti-white.
When Roland Martin said, the further we get away from the civil rights movement, the more people lose a kind of identity with blackness, and he's right. But what you'll see happening is the constant peddling of the remaking of these grievance porn films like Roots and Rosewood and all the rest of it. I mean, 12 Years a Slave. I mean, to me, it seems like every 3 or 4 years they're coming up with some new film to, in a sense, keep the struggle alive. I don't know. What do y'all think? Do y'all see that too?
Yeah, they have to.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't think it's working as good. I don't think it's working as good as it used to, because younger people, their lives look totally different. They are talking to people all over the world. They interact with people that don't look like them all the time, and they don't see them as racist. They're doing business with them. They're trying, they're trying to get to the money. A lot of them, these young men, they don't want to struggle like their parents did. Like they saw their parents struggle. They don't want to work for a company for 35, 40 years and then be kicked out with or retired and get a gold watch, and still don't know how and can't pay their bills. You know what I mean? Like they want to do better in life. And so this whole, oh, you're black and you're oppressed, they ain't trying to hear that, because they can see all these black successful people. Like, wait a minute, how come they can make it? Like I can do something else. I don't have to do that.
Quisha, like the point that you just made, I think is an important one, because I see exactly what you're talking about. I've seen a good deal of that myself, but you still see a lot of vestiges of the desire to be a victim, desire to be a part of the struggle. I can't tell you how many posts that I've seen on Instagram alone of Black women who are traveling the world, right? And it's interesting. Maybe you all have seen these posts too, but they'll go to like Taiwan or Hong Kong or, the UK or wherever the case may be. And they'll talk about how like, look at Japan, they got this and they got that. And they're talking about all the luxuries and the creature comforts that exist in these particular countries. And without fail, they'll mention the racism of America. And you don't see the racism that exists in America. Without fail, like clockwork, they always have to bring it back to the racism in America juxtaposed to the seeming utopia of this country that I'm visiting. And so it's like, what is it that how is it that you were able to earn enough money in America for you to be able to go overseas to this other country, only to still talk about the racism and oppression that exists in the country that you were? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't square, but they need it to exist in their mind, and they keep believing this narrative, even though their very lifestyle defies the narrative they believe. And so for me, it's like, while I do see what you're saying, Quisha, and I see that a lot, I also see the other side of it, where people just want for this narrative to keep breathing.
I see it too. I see both also.
I'm
just seeing more, I guess. I'm seeing more.
2 days.
Been there 2
I'm not
days.
saying that there are, huh?
And Quisha, they don't go there. I bet you they don't go over there and cut up like they do when they over here. They do exactly what they told. They fall right in
Some of
line.
them do go over. You know what is funny? Some of them
Tiana.
do go over to these countries and act a whole fool because they are accustomed to the luxury and the leniency that they have in America. And they think that other countries are like America. And they don't understand. Don't come
And
over
not only that, and not only that, let me add this piece here. There's a lot of non-Americans who do believe that America is a racist country, that America is hostile and oppressive to Black people in particular. There's a lot of non-Americans that believe that because of the narrative that is constantly being peddled by mass media. Yeah. So, I mean, somebody said it earlier. I think it was either Chuck or Blanche about the mass movement around the world concerning George Floyd. They believe the narrative that Black men every day are being accosted by police who are trying to put their knee on our necks. Like there's like legitimately people around the world who believe that narrative.
Yeah.
Like anyway.
Sorry,
like I know personally Black people who've gone overseas, and as soon as the individual, as soon as somebody in these other countries hear their accent and realize they're American, they always ask, hey, what's it like in America? Like, with all the racism and all the oppression. Even Bodhi Bakum, has told a story, or I've heard him tell the story at least 3 times when he went to Zambia, Africa, which is a all Black country. Wanted Bodhi to tell them stories about all the oppression that exists here. And he's like, look, y'all, I've seen y'all get beat on the side of the road with sticks by the Zambian police officers for stealing a loaf of bread. Like America is nowhere near as bad as what you got going on here, but they legitimately believe that, Black people are being oppressed every day here.
So I guess it's like you would rather be beat by somebody that looks like you than be beat by, somebody that doesn't look like you. When you beat by somebody that don't look like you, then it's racist.
And that's the thing, because they justify it when it's Black, because the thing is racism. So the ultimate sin for Black people is racism. So you can knock their head off just as long as you're not white doing it. And so that's just how they feel about it. And the problem is that the Black identity comes with Black people being a monolith. So what happens to George Floyd, even though it happened to George Floyd, it happened to every Black man. So even if a Black person has a great life, they're still experiencing what I would call secondhand oppression or secondhand racism or third hand, because it's happening to someone that's Black. And so they identify, and Chad did a video where he talks about Black people identifying with the lowest common denominator when it's time to vote. So they identify with the people in the projects or the less fortunate when it's time to vote, which is foolish, because you can help these people right now. You don't do it. But I just think that how Black folks view each other it's this, we all have this shared experience. And so when they put a movie out, like I remember Rosewood, people in the movie theater crying, white people crying, people falling on the floor. I'm like, what the heck? Like they just, well, listen, when Esther Rose got shot, or the theater erupted into a white liberal seizure.
Seizure.
Yeah, white liberal and a nigga explosion. They were just, one side was cursing, one side was crying. Oh, Apollo, man, listen. That we got out the movie theater. These white people were like apologizing. I'm so sorry. I remember thinking, yo, get out my way so I can leave this movie theater. We was like, okay. Like they was literally in the front of the movie theater begging for forgiveness. And I'm like, what is this? Like, but again, did the propaganda works? It works. You had black folks wanting to beat them up, and you had white folks crying for forgiveness. It just was disgusting. I look back, it was just disgusting. But
you know what just hit me? We say all the time, you know, if politically, you know, if the left really cared about black people, how come they never say anything about abortion? If the left really cared, how come there's never, you know, never a conversation on when it's black on black crime? It just in talking about this, it's just because they're not, because it's a black person doing it to another black person. Like, it doesn't matter if it's only when a white person does. I know we've said this like a million times. I don't know why this is hitting me this way right now. Like, it's only when a white person does it that it matters to black people, generally speaking. Like, if you're black and if you're a black person pushing for black people to kill your, you know, to unalive your child, they're like, okay, fine, talk. Charlemagne, Teslin, figure whatever her name is, all the Angela Rye, Maxine Waters, they can promote, you know, abortion to the hilt. Nobody has a problem with it. Nobody has a problem with, you know, black men killing other black. Why aren't you crying in the streets when Ray down the street got shot by Pookie? How come that doesn't make you cry and put up the black square and all of that stuff?
Because
you know, it is so crazy.
Because
to
that's
me.
a byproduct.
The value of life is so conditioned. It's been boiled down to who's doing the killing.
It's economic crime. Economics. It's a crime. It's a crime of opportunity. It's an economic crime. You know, you have to take into account all of the things that the perpetrator has gone through and how racism and white supremacy has affected his life and turned him into a killer, essentially. I mean, why, you know, what did Bernie Sanders say that one time about how, you know, sick of a society we are, just to think how many people we lock up, how many people we imprison. But the fact of the matter is that the opposite would be true. I think that the larger the prison population, I think that would be indicative of a healthy society, not of a sick one.
Or the amount of mothers who kill their children. That's not indicative of an unhealthy society.
Well,
the
amount
of mothers who kill their, like, that's bad, like, that is crazy.
That too. But you know.
And now you see the spiritual component of it. So now sin isn't sin. Sin is only based on whether or not white people are doing it. So, like, even with the abortion issue, people promote abortion in the black community, but as soon as a white person says they're pro-life, all of a sudden now it's an evil intent behind not wanting you to have an abortion. Right. And so if you notice, the sin is based on what the white people are doing. So if a white person is doing it and a black person does it, it's okay. If a black person is doing it and a white person is against it, then what the black person is doing is right because the white person is against it. And so now you've distorted what actual sin is. Now sin is based on socio-political aspects of life versus just right and wrong. Even with LeBron James, this whole thing with nepotism, everybody's saying, well, you didn't say nothing when the white people do it all the time. The white people, I'm like, how does that make it right though? Just imagine if every time you did something wrong, you had the pass to say it was white people's fault. White people did it first. Like, who wouldn't use it? So now you see black people literally saying it's okay to do it because white people either did it, or white people either got away with it, or they're doing it now. And so we have this whole culture that's really just bent on lawlessness and anti-God's word, just based on this propaganda they're feeding black people that if white people have done it or doing it, then it's automatically wrong. But if you participate in it, then it's justice. So now you have them justifying sin. So now if you're murdering your child in the name of reproductive rights for black women, then guess what? You're in the right. If you're a white person saying, like the one white lady, she said, this is for my granddaughters. It doesn't make any sense. You're advocating abortion and you have grandchildren. It doesn't make any sense. But guess what? It don't have to make sense, because the goal is to be quote unquote anti. Really, what she's doing is even anti-white, because all of this stuff goes back to white people setting these rules up. Even the white people going against this stuff are really just going against what they consider to be the conservative Christian white values. And so at the end of the day, it has to be a spiritual revolution. It has to be a Bible-based, God word, Jesus revolution, because where we are now, it's beyond politics. It's beyond it. This is literal people trying to usher in the okaying of sin out in the open for the world. That's what they're doing. And black people are leading that charge. If you ask a black person right now, paint a scenario, is it okay to steal from a white business if you are upset that somebody got killed by the police? They're going to say yes. Is it okay to destroy? They're going to say yes. And so the problem is that even the foundation of this stuff now was beyond politics. This is actually a religion now. It's talking about liberation theology. This stuff is put over into society, where now right is wrong, and wrong is right.
That's right. That's right.
And that has to be. They even saying that all these white folks, these pro-life white folks, I don't know if y'all seeing these clips. He's got these folks. They so crazy talking about something. It's not about when white people say it, when they're pro-life, it's not that they're trying to prevent, they're trying to stop blacks from killing their own children. It's that no. They realize that white people are dying out.
Right.
And so it's closeted racism. They want to preserve their race. This is why they're pro-choice. Pro-life, excuse me. They're trying to preserve their race. So being pro-life means you're racist because you want more white babies, right? This is what they say. And like Blanche just said, it's white folk do it. It's all, it's never that we're saying it's and all white folks do it. They did it first. We can do. But mind you, the melanin is supposed to make you this magical being. You're supposed to be so better. You're supposed to be so superior, right? The Egyptians, so we are told, who were black, so we are told, are the ones who educated and taught the Greeks, right? It was the Moors that civilized southern and southwestern Europe around the Iberian Peninsula. It was the Moors who brought medieval and Gothic architecture into Europe, and the black folks did this, and the black folks did. We taught white folks how to do everything, but now for some strange reason, everything has turned on a dime. And now it's monkey see, monkey do. Now we do what they, we follow up behind them. So we say, right, okay.
I'm gonna have a Chuck moment right now and address the chat. This TL Goldie, I'm assuming you're a ma'am because you're talking about a ectopic pregnancy. So we're talking about abortion, and she says, so if I almost died 3 months ago from an ectopic pregnancy, that's okay. You need to stop with the foolishness. Good and doggone well that abortion is not saving a mother's life because of an ectopic pregnancy. Good and doggone well that is the voluntary termination of a pregnancy. I don't think that there is. I'm going to go on record and say that there are zero states that do not have exceptions for the life of the mother, rape, and incest. I don't believe that there are any places that do not put the life of the mother before a complication of the pregnancy. So stop the cap, girl. And if you don't know, if you are that gung-ho about abortion, then you need to go read about it and know what you're talking about. Don't come up in here doing that foolishness. These are people's lives. These are innocent children's lives. So don't play these kind of games talking about a topic, pregnancies, as if that is what we're talking about. You know good and doggone well what an abortion is, and it ain't that. Stop it.
She talking about she stay in Louisiana. Well, how the beignets? I mean, what that mean? You stay in Louisiana?
Right.
Is the gumbo good? What you talking about?
Gumbo good, right?
Okay.
Right. That's it, man. Maybe y'all could take some. Maybe y'all could take some of these Haitians. You know, maybe they fit right in down there. But yeah, and it's funny too, Quisha, because even during in the late 1960s when they were polling people in these various states, because again, it was just like, you can say what you want to say about abortion, but abortion was slowly being legalized and allowed state by state by state, slowly but surely. I think the first 3 states to legalize abortion were, I think it was California, Connecticut, and Arizona. Something like that. I know California was one of the 3. I think it was the year was sometime 1966, 67, somewhere around there. But even when they polled Americans back in the late 1960s, they were of the opinion, and you can make the case that perhaps in the 1960s, there was a far more conservative America. I don't know. But especially in states that were, I guess, what we would consider, I guess, blue states, by today's, common political jargon. But in those particular states, a lot of people were of the opinion that abortion should be allowed or should be legal in cases of sexual assault or incest or something to that effect. But just abortion simply for the sake of wanting to get rid of a child because it could inconvenience your life, which is what we're talking about, and which is what those on the left are talking about, because the right to abort a child is the handmaiden of the feminist movement. Most folks weren't in support of that. But to your point, teacher, even going back, and that was never the case, even going as far back to the 1960s when the abortion, I guess, thing was, I guess, somewhat of an issue. Well, again, when it really wasn't. But what you had was, again, you had each individual state taking up the duty or the political responsibility to decide what to do about this issue. But what happened is when you have these Marxist progressives, they sought to kind of stomp the entire nation, right? Do away with states' rights and embrace quote unquote human rights, this radicalism, this radical Marxism, top down. Right? We're going to do it this way. We're going to impose our will upon the states. They did the same thing when it came to civil rights, impose our will upon the states, seize control of the federal government and impose our will upon the states. They even did it when it came to making Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday into a holiday, impose it upon the states.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Are we still reading supers, or are we going to circle back?
Thank you, Patrina John P. Dot, for the super sticker. Thank you so much. Chris Creative. So what if I don't want a woman leading my country?
Right. Right. What's wrong with that?
Thanks, Chris, for the super sticker. Will Doc, blessings, CTTC. Can you explain why the left hasn't hammered Trump's felony more in their campaign ads? And congrats to Quisha.
Oh, thank you.
That's a good.
I mean, they know that they're trumped up charges, no pun intended.
I think it's backfiring when they do too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They know that it's a political witch hunt, and they understand that to the extent that they really push it, it's not a good look for them. So I think that's the reason. I mean, you see them taking jabs like, oh, he's a felon, he's 36 convictions. You'll see them use that kind of rhetoric, but beyond that, you don't really see much, to your point. And so as far as them campaigning on that, so
it's funny too when you hear these people. Like we had the guy in the montage last week talk about Trump being a felon, and it's just like You run into people at the water cooler, at the gym, barbershop, beauty salon, wherever, and just ask them if they bring it up. Well, Trump's a felon. It's like, what did he do? Explain it. What did he do? What is he? What was he charged with? What was he convicted of? What did he do? A lot of people who running around talking about what Donald Trump's a felon, they can't even tell you what he did.
They don't even know.
They don't even know.
And just like, I just want to say, just like this Tiogo talking about the young, probably Amber Thurman, the woman who died in Georgia, because the left is trying to make a big deal out of trying to tie this woman's death to abortion, when it literally was the abortion that killed her. Had she not taken the pill, she would still be alive. And they're somehow trying to make this case about her not having abortion access. Like, how the freak do you flip that one? she took a pill, and because she took this pill, she and I would, I don't know what happened when she got to the hospital, but it was not because she didn't get an abortion, okay? Because she got one. It was the remains of her twins, okay? 2 innocent little babies, twins, that their body parts were still left in her, which caused sepsis. She got the abortion. This is stupid. Like, I don't even understand how any thinking person could try to lump this. Oh, so she died because she wasn't able to have abortion access, which she got. Like, it's fascinating. Again, flipping up the language, flipping of everything, twisting everything upside down. It don't make no doggone sense. Right. And this is the same person who had the nerve to ask the level of education in the chat, and you want to try to girl, stop it, please.
Didn't they try to say that, to try to paint her as this bright young woman who's on her way to, what's she about to enroll? And what'd you say, Chad?
That's what Oprah tried to do with her. That's what Oprah tried to do with her narrative.
See, like, she didn't have any choice. The babies were getting in the way of her career and all that stuff, and they ride this wave as if they, that they have the moral high ground. But once again, this is what abortion was all about. It was an attempt to do an end around the female of the species, to do an end around her biological imperative. This is all baked into the Marxist pie, the Marxist cake. When women's liberation became a strand of the new left in the 1960s, because the attitude was we have to find a way to make a woman's make her nature not a factor. Especially when you look, when they called themselves looking at wealth and income discrepancies, they saw that a woman's call to duty as far as her home life was interfering with her ability to be more independent and self-sufficient, so as to allow her the opportunity to sneak out the back door, so to speak, so that she wouldn't be bound by the sexist tyranny of the marriage and the institution of marriage, which was an institution, of course, that benefited the patriarchy at the expense of a woman's freedoms and so on and so forth. And so how do we do that? And not only that, but let's find a way to where women could be just as sexually explorative as men are, considering the fact that men don't really have to they don't bear the burden of childbirth and so on and so forth. They can go and have a child and have sex somewhere, impregnate a woman, leave the child and go here and there and so on and so forth. The whole notion was that a woman doesn't necessarily have that quote unquote luxury, if you want to call it that. It doesn't mean that the man isn't immoral for what he's doing, but the woman should have the right to do that as well. And then once again, you saw with abortion, with the birth control pill hitting the market, Playboy and all these things were taken off. This was all during the baby boomer, just when a lot of them were born, a lot of them were children and teenagers, right? Playboy had took off in the 1950s, and it was off to the races. And so they were promoting and teaching and trying to stress to women to be more, to be sexually liberated, to be like the men. So that's what this whole abortion thing is about. It's nothing to do with your health and atopical pregnancies and none of this foolishness.
And that is exactly it. I did this series on occult feminism. They want to be like men. Not that they want to be men, not that they were trying to just have the same rights as men. No, these women want to be men. Kamala Harris just did this raunchy, trashy podcast called Call Her Daddy. I just thought that was so fascinating. Call Her Daddy. I was like, just in line with this whole feminist thing of trying to be like men. Why we got to call you daddy? You a whole woman. Why would we call you daddy? This is what they want to be. They want to be men. This is I forget the scripture where God is like, you're gonna want, telling Eve, you're gonna want to be to rule over your husband. That's what you're gonna want to do. You're gonna want to be a man. And oh God. Anyway, I'm sorry. I promise not to interrupt anymore. Go ahead.
All right, Robert Lamoa. One way the Democrats are able to keep the black vote is by triggering black people's subconscious mind using trauma, symbolism, and repetition. That is true. Thank you, Robert. Shelley Day, the greatest want of a world is men who will not be bought or sold, men who in their inmost souls are true and honest, men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. That's you guys. Thank you, Miss Day. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Why do you think the messaging is appearing to break internet? I was asking a question.
Well, I mean, what does he mean by the messaging starting to break? Like it's starting to, I don't know. Like, you understand what he's trying to say?
I think like, why are people starting to defect? The internet, like, is it the internet?
That could be.
Well, yeah, I think the thing now this time is anytime the media is saying something, you have this push to find out if they're telling the truth. Mm-hmm. So like, because what they did was they villainized Trump to the point now where folks like it's overload, it's overkill. So this can't be, you know what I'm saying? So you're forcing people to basically check what you're saying. So 10 years ago, if Obama had said what he said, black folks would have been doing praise worship dance in church. Right. But today they're offended by it. So it's just a different, with the internet, it's just a different time because there's so much information out here. There's so many different opinions, and it's kind of rebellious to be against this, what they it's funny, they call it the establishment. The left is the establishment.
Right.
The left is status quo. And so it's kind of hard to be a rebel if you agreeing with Kamala Harris and Barack Obama and all, and you really can't be a rebel. You really can only be a rebel if you riding with Trump. Trump is the more rebellious figure because he seemed to be anti-establishment. So I think from a rebel perspective, you don't want to be with, think about it, even Umar and him is not with Kamala because she represents too much of the,
that's right.
You know what I'm saying? Even they're like, if we side with her, we're not going to be seen as, think about it, look how it looks when the men have to support Kamala. Listen to Steve Harvey. Listen, y'all, let's just vote and get some next time. You know, Ricky Smiley, like, let's make history. Let's get a black woman. Like, look how you sound supporting Kamala Harris. You don't sound very rebellious. You don't sound very pro-black. You know what I'm saying? And to add to it, the Negrostinians don't like her stance on Palestine. So you really can't rock with her now. So now you know, it's just, I don't know. So I think it's cooler to be Trump / anti Kamala.
And before you go on, Blanche, real quick, one more time, just to add another point to Quisha's point when she was clapping back at that person in the comment section about the abortion comment. I think I'm trying to remember what was I told you guys about. I don't know if you remember when I talked about the book that came out. I think the year was 1971, called "Our Bodies, Ourselves," and this was put together by a group of female physicians, and they were trying to teach women ways to engage in free sex and to avoid the pitfalls of of contracting sexually transmitted diseases by teaching them how to perform these shorthand inspections. Because in 1968, the female or feminist activist by the name of Caroline Bird, she's the one who coined the term sexism. So the story goes, in 1968, and she defines sexism as judging people by their sex when sex doesn't matter. But unfortunately, and again, they were taking the racism dynamic and superimposing it upon this new thing. Because to go back to the Feminine Mystique that was published in 1963, Steinem defined the issue, or she characterized it as a problem without a name, an issue without a name. She didn't know what to call it, but she claimed that it was this thing. And then 5 years later, when Caroline Bird coined the term sexism, then this new social justice push was born. All right. And we had in the early 70s with the book Our Bodies, Ourselves, you also had the publication of the founding of Ms. Magazine. And another popular book I wanted to mention, which is why I brought this back up, was a book that was written by a anarcho-Marxist, this author by the name of Alex Comfort. He came out with this book in 1973, I think was the same year as Roe v. Wade, called The Joy of Sex. Big time hit, huge hit, mega best-selling book. I think to this day it's sold like 4 or 5 million copies. A book titled The Joy of Sex by Alex Comfort. All of this was in the late 60s, early 70s, the baby boomer generation. These books were all the rage. And it was teaching me, and it was funny because to add on to this is that when men and women were both polled, they were asked, because this rising feminist movement, because in the early 60s, women, they weren't even with it. They didn't even, because the cigarette company, as a matter of fact, Virginia Slim, the cigarette company that was marketed towards women, they actually did polls. And something like 90% of the women that they polled said that their sex had not been a factor in their lives up until that point. They didn't even recognize sexism as being an issue. And more than half of the women that Virginia Slim polled didn't even know who Gloria Steinem was. And this was after the publication of the Feminine Mystique. They didn't even know who she was. So, and about 10 years later, when all of the sexism and feminism stuff began, they asked men and women, respectively, their opinions about the women's liberation movement. And a much higher percentage of men supported it than did women. Now, of course, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, because why wouldn't men enjoy this new woman, this new sexually liberated woman? Now, of course, in the long run, now you got these men complaining that they can't find suitable wives. Go figure. But in the 1970s, it was the men that were carrying the torch, like Blanchard always talks about. The men lead, and this is men. This is what they do, and they were the ones who were pushing women's liberation more so even than the women were by the early 1970s, because they wanted the sex.
That point that you bring up so eloquently, Chuck, is part of the reason why when somebody brings up the book 1984, George Orwell. The book is talked mostly. The book is talked about mostly by conservatives. Then I hear liberals just talking about the book or bringing it up, and their perception is that George Orwell is trying to warn against communism and socialism. I say no, quite contrary.
No, he was a socialist.
He was a socialist. He's warning against fascism. If you read 1984, the theme of sex comes up quite a bit, and the oppressive government in his book is being so oppressive that it's trying to outlaw sex for pleasure. And a lot of the youngsters in the during this kind of rebellious revolutionary movement, they were familiar with 1984. And they saw their kind of giving in to the free love movement, the free sex movement, as a kind of, basically they're feeding their own desires and feeding their own flesh, but they are also defying what they felt was an oppressive government in the same fashion as the oppressive government in 1984. Anyway, just an interesting nugget there. But I mean, Chuck knows as well as I do that when it comes to communism and fascism, they're basically the same thing. So. But it's interesting to see that a lot of conservatives believe that George Orwell was this champion of conservatism when that wasn't true at all. So.
No, he was just he was an anti-Soviet communist, you know. And so when he looked at 1984, that was like his fictionalized, dramatized version of what he thought life in the Soviet Union was like.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a long backstory to 1984. But yeah, George Orwell wasn't this champion.
And he was also anti-fascism too.
Yeah, he was. True.
But you're right though, because the bearded or the mustached figure is supposed to resemble Stalin, right?
Yeah.
And Big Brother. Anyway.
I do want to clarify. So there are 4 states in the country that do not allow for exceptions for the R word and incest. That's Louisiana, Alabama, West Virginia, and Tennessee.
Again, but if you were to ask the person who would be the product of incest, are they happy with being alive? Would they have much rather their parents killed them? You know, it goes back to one of Ronald Reagan's many quips. He known for one of the things he was known for was his wit, his sense of humor. When Ronald Reagan once famously said that it's funny that everyone who supports abortion are people who are alive. You don't ever ask the dead people how they feel. You know, ironically, it's always the living that are in support of abortions, never the dead person. Care about, you know, incest. What does that have to do with the child? I don't want to raise it. I don't want to be reminded of my abuser or my this or my that. Okay. You know how many people out there would love to just clamoring to take care of a child?
Mm-hmm.
Are you kidding me?
And as a woman that has had an abortion, I know the trauma of abortion. That's why I'm so because it's not like, oh, you just do it and then you just go about your life and everything is fine. It's not fine. It's not, they don't tell you about the trauma. That's why it's not just, ectopic pregnancies or, problems with, these are not the majority of abortions, okay? They're not. They are elective, voluntary, walking in there. It's a problem. A child is not a problem. And so, but you have to deal with that because there is whether you want to acknowledge it or not, there is, the devil is crafty. You understand exactly what you've done, and it is a heavy burden to carry. So you're trying to promote this thing like it's just so wonderful. Go listen to women who've had one who are open and honest enough about the trauma after you get up off that table. Okay, this is serious.
Right.
Because I am very conservative on this topic. I am one of those people I don't believe that a child should have to pay the ultimate price because they had a bad father. So you don't even want to know my opinion. I don't believe in the rape health of the mother. Yes. Rape and incest. No, I don't. I don't think a child should have to pay the ultimate price of death for having a terrible father. We wouldn't do it in any other instance.
Yeah, because like you say, that's your sin now. That's your sin now. Congratulations. You were raped and now you're a murderer. Congratulations.
Oof.
I think that this is the longest we've ever taken to get through the supers, by the way.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. And I got to stop at like 10:30.
All right. Thank you, Nah Moses. Shelly Day. Not done yet. The greatest one of the world is men whose conscience is as true to duty as a needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right, though the heaven falls. Got this quote from a book. Amen. Shelly Day, thank you. Jerome B, super sticker, thank you so much. Mountain Woman, super sticker, thank you so much. Nah Moses, Chad, you roasted the female traveler on your IG. They called you a failed plumber. Chad's response was, I'm doing better in my biz than you did in your last marriage. Okay, Chad.
Wait a minute. I watched that reel. I don't remember you saying that. You said that.
No, some woman. It was in response to the Camilla Harris saying that nobody can start a business for $5,000. And so I posted a reel in my response. And
them
there are people in the comment section saying, "Oh, it costs you more than $5,000 for your tools on." Here's one. And she said, she was this black woman. She was talking about, "Oh, that's why you have a failed plumbing business or whatever." And I basically just told her, I was like, "Well," I said, my business is doing much better than your last marriage." And I don't think she liked that too much. So
good.
Matt Blaylock, the standards that people hold you to are what they truly think about you.
True.
That is true.
That is mic drop right there.
Thank you, Matt. Rockwell Porter, super sticker, thank you so much. And Derek Perry, abortion is about population control, period, particularly controlling blacks and other unwanted, the poor and undesirables.
And the undesirables.
That's what they say.
Thank you so much.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Well, I gotta go. But are we wrapping up? Or are you guys gonna keep going?
We might have to do a part two, Chad, because
let's do a part two
on the supers.
Yeah, let's do a part two. I don't think I don't know. I might be back next Sunday. Depends. I'm gonna be traveling again. So
Baltimore.
Yeah, they're in Michigan. So
He going from decadence to decadence. Detroit's better than Baltimore. Baltimore is just, that's a third world country.
How's it going, Chuck, with all the Muslims and all that in Detroit? I saw some dust up recently. I can't, just saw something.
The thing is that it's a generational thing, right? And then you kind of see this de-evolution or this regression with every generation. It's a different kind of thing, for example, than what you see in, say, like Minnesota with the Somali population there. Dearborn and Dearborn Heights has been, it's a community. It's been there for decades. And the Muslims, they're largely assimilated. Now, their politics is another thing. But these are well off. These are safe areas, very minimal to low crime areas. You don't really see much going on there. And we also have like this small pocket Jewish population in a suburb of Detroit called Southfield. And last I checked, I haven't heard about any like dust ups, any people, Arab Muslims coming from Dearborn, coming over to Southfield and starting mess or vice versa. People kind of pretty much, get along. It's been, this has been Metro Detroit for a very long time now. Again, we will see what happens moving forward because we know how minorities are easily radicalized. And if we are getting this influx from other parts of the world, those who have a more blatant and overt anti-American attitude, you can very well see some cultural clashes between those, mainstays that have been here for generations and those just arriving. Because, a part of the, I'm just going to come out and say it, this attitude that is built into the Quran itself suggests that not only are the dhimmi, right, or the believers or people of the book, Christians and Jews who are not in fact Christian, not only are they to be second-class citizens in the afterlife, they are meant to be second-class citizens here. And it is to the extent that Muslims embrace liberal values that Allah has removed the hedge of protection from them, which is why they are dominated on earth by Christians and Jews. So until they reject the West, they will never rule over the dhimmi as the Quran says they will, as Muhammad says they will. And so when you start bringing more of these people in, and they start seeing that the Muslims here, they may have left-wing views, they may hate conservatives, they may like whatever, you know, they may be impolite or say certain things about Christians and Jews in private. When you see them in public, it's, hey, my brother, hey, so how you know, it's not that, right? They understand how to go along to get along. But when you get more and more of that, we'll see how things shape up in the near future. But you know, the radicalism is starting to probably turn up a little bit. You know, we will see again when you have Muslims shaming them. How dare you start a business and do this and do that? You're selling out. You're selling out to the cause because you're living harmoniously amongst the infidel.
Yeah,
they can't stand for that. I'm telling you, they can't stand for that. And people think they don't believe fat meat is greasy, but they're gonna find out soon enough if they're not careful.
Yeah, I think a lot of things, God will continue to reveal a lot of things in these times. I think we are going to call it a night. Shelly Day says she likes the honeymoon glow. Yes, darling, I'm glowing. Yes, glowing, darling. We will see you guys next Sunday. We're going to do a part 2 on this. This is a really great topic. And there's so many more clips to get to. And as you guys can see, it touches on so many different things. Just talking about the boomers, I think, because, you know, a big part of their history is in the 60s, which is things we like to talk about on this show. So until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure you like this channel, share it out with your friends, become a member, do all the things that you can do to support the work that we do here, because yes, and hit us up, you know, send a super chat, send a cash app or support us monetarily if you can. We thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.